Welcome to the Private Practice Startup, where we inspire you from startup to mastery. We chat with entrepreneurs, experts in the mental health and business arenas, and successful private practitioners to give you the tools needed to make your dream practice a reality. Visit theprivatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, free trainings, and so much more. Here are your hosts, Dr. Kate Campbell and Katie Lemieux. What's up, Startup Nation? We are back for another episode of the Private Practice Startup Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kate Campbell, and my awesome co-host here is...
Hey, everybody, it's Katie Lemieux. Welcome back.
Yes. I mean, we're both co-hosts together. I hope it didn't position me as like higher than you.
The host.
I am the one and only host. No, that's not how we roll. We roll as a duo, as in K2. And we're excited to be here today. We've got our awesome guest interview expert, John Clark from Private Practice Workshop. Hey, John.
How's it going?
It's going awesome. We're really excited to have you here all the way from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yes, back from where I used to live in North Carolina. I used to live in like Greensboro, High Point area in the middle of the state, and then went to college at East Carolina. So I'm a pirate.
Very good.
Yeah. Awesome. And you just recently moved there from San Francisco, right?
Yeah, I lived in San Francisco and kind of around the Bay Area for a number of years. That's where I started my first practice. And then, but I grew up in Virginia, so I, came back to be on the East Coast for a little bit. But I certainly miss a lot of things about the West Coast. California is a hard place to leave.
Yes. I'm so excited about going to California. Actually, in October, we're going to the wine country for our anniversary. My husband and I, that's where we honeymooned. I know I'm getting a little off topic. We'll get back on. Yes. So last week we had an awesome podcast. We had Amy Lassiter, and she had talked about the 4 steps to shift your mindset and create clarity. So if you haven't heard that yet, definitely go back and check that out. And we want to welcome those of you who are first-time listeners. We've got a special gift for you. We have our A to Z cheat sheet, the essentials for building your dream private practice. You can always download that off of theprivatepracticestartup.com. Just head over to our resources tab, and there you'll see lots of goodies and resources for building and growing your practice. Also, if you're not already connected to us within our exclusive Facebook group, we have a worldwide community of private practitioners and podcasts, our podcast guest experts, and all sorts of people supporting everybody from startup to mastery. So definitely connect with us there as well. We're really excited to have John on today talking about how to get more done in less time. Who doesn't want that, right?
Exactly. So before we jump into the topic, you guys know we love to share fun facts, and John definitely has some fun facts. So a few of his fun facts. He definitely loves what he does. He eats, sleeps, and breathes private practice stuff. And truth be told, John, we do too. And crazy enough, I just found this speaker that you can put in the shower on Groupon. So I bought it this week so I can actually listen to my podcast while I'm in the shower and not leave my phone on top of the shower doors. It was only $7.99 for one. And you can actually, it's funny because you can actually answer the phone while you're in the shower. Now that's a little too much for me, but I do love to listen to podcasts and books in the shower. So
yeah, you definitely don't want to be answering while a client's calling
right.
you in the shower.
Not so appropriate.
Right.
So John has a therapy dog. He has 2 cats. He loves playing his drums. He is an experienced martial artist and is currently practicing not Muay Thai, but Muay Thai, kickboxing. And I love this other one. When he was a kid, he hated getting haircuts because mom always took him to JCPenny and they would totally screw it up. But now he goes to super hip barbers and he loves getting haircuts. So thank you for that fun fact. And,
hipster barbers.
Hipster barbers.
Hipster barber shops.
Good stuff. Yeah. So John, tell us what led you into the business that you're in now.
So I started Private Practice Workshop initially just as a blog. I learned a lot of things the hard way in my first practice in San Francisco in a very competitive market. And I would just be out hanging out with my friends or at a bar or something, and they would start picking my brain about private practice. And eventually I realized, okay, they all kind of have the same questions, especially in the early phases of starting up. And so I want a place to put all these lessons that I've learned, and that way I can just send them to the website and send them to the blog. And really then it transitioned into, okay, that I was doing consulting and coaching with therapists. And now it's turned into a lot more. I've got online courses. I've got my podcast that just launched. It's called The Marketing Workshop. I've got all sorts of things kind of coming out of Private Practice Workshop, but it really just started as a blog, and that's still a really integral part of kind of what I do with it.
That's awesome. It's kind of similar to how we launched the Private Practice Startup. It came about very organically as well. Yeah, Katie and I both had our 6-figure private practices on opposite sides of the county here in South Florida. And we would just attract people who were naturally asking us, how did you build what you built? Help us to do this. And we were coaching people and loving that. And eventually the Private Practice Startup was born. Long story short. Yeah. So really cool. Good stuff. So tell us, what would you say is the best advice that you've ever received that relates to building a business and being in entrepreneurship?
I don't know if I received this advice or rather just kind of learned it along the way, but I think so much of being successful in private practice has to do with being steadfast. That's kind of the word that I keep coming back to. There's going to be hard times and times where you feel like I can't do this. I don't know how to market. I can't raise my fees, or I'm just in a really low period, right? Clients aren't coming or they're all quitting at once. And your ability to kind of ride those waves has so much to do with your success. And some people quit, I think, too soon before finding out that they could have overcome those obstacles. So that I keep coming back to that, even in my own practice and growth, and now in my consulting practice, that it really is just about being steadfast.
Awesome. Yeah, there are so many ebbs and flows and ups and downs and unexpected twists and turns. It's quite the journey, but that steadfastness is definitely an important quality.
So let's jump into your topic. So how to get done in less time. So what do you want to share with the audience first?
Yeah, and I'll try to pack in as much as I can into this, but you guys, of course, jump in and interrupt me as you see fit. First of all, we have to reevaluate our relationship with our email. Being on email all day, it creates this illusion that you're getting stuff done and just checking things off of your list, or just making your inbox a little less overwhelming. Gives us this illusion that we're getting stuff done, that we're being productive, right? And I just want to say that that's not always true.
The email box illusion. Yes, yeah. It is such an illusion.
So we have to get that out of our head, first of all, and realize that you're not necessarily getting a lot done. If anything, what it does a lot of times is it allows other people to create emergencies for you or crises for you. This also includes texting as well when people are texting you, but it allows people to put something in front of your face right away and pull you away from whatever it is you were doing. So we have to develop some boundaries with that. Of course, where people are checking their email is usually your phone or your computer. So I'm going to talk about those two separately. Along the way, we have to change our relationship with our phone as well, which is, we could spend hours talking about that, right? And just our tendency to really cling to it, our tendency to check social media. But I really find that you have to be careful about having work email on your phone. I've experimented with this and gone from, at least at minimum, I would suggest that people turn off notifications for email on your phone. This for me has helped me get so much more done because, again, people aren't able to create these emergencies and put things on my plate constantly throughout the day. If you're going to have work email on your phone, I think you can at least turn off notifications, or if you want to take it a step further, you could even delete email from your phone altogether, which I know probably sounds risky to a lot of people. There's a lot of what ifs, or what if a client emails me, or what if I miss something? But the reality is we are near a computer or on a computer so much of the day that I think you get just as much done, if not more done, when you actually set that boundary with your phone.
That's so true. And it's interesting because I remember that I had done a year of business coaching and Kate had come with me to one of the day-long trainings, which you work on your business all day. And I think the topic was time mastery that day, and they were talking about email. And what was really interesting is, so being away from the computer all day, I go home to check my email, and literally it only took me 45 minutes to answer everything and get done, delete it. And it was a really cool experience. And that really enlightened me to be like, well, I don't know if I really need to have the email open all the time. And I know for me, and I know we were talking about your favorite book, The One Thing, before we got on the podcast. For me, when I have to work on a project, I will close out my email and everything else. So there's nothing else that can bother me, or notifications or bings or dings or whistles or whatever. And it really, really helps. And it just feels so great to get more done. I definitely came from the view of multitasking and thinking that helps. But it's interesting, as I progress in my life and my business, is really relevant to your topic, right? I actually have way more time and I'm getting way more done. And so I love that you talk about the phone and email. Our colleague, one of our colleagues here who works with couples, she calls the phone the affair partner.
Right.
And it totally is, whether it's, from your spouse or your partner, or taking away time from your kids, or it's crazy.
It's a constant threat to our time and our productivity. We have to get better with it. I know some folks who only check email a couple times a day. And I think the authors of The One Thing actually talk about this, but that's another way to actually get a lot more done, is just to check your email, say first thing in the morning, one time at lunch, maybe one time before you clock out. And then if you're really tempted, you could check it, in the evening or at 8 o'clock or something like that. Because I know a lot of people in private practice and who are entrepreneurs are going to do that regardless. So, but even just breaking it up like that, I think you'll find that you get so much more done and you're doing better quality work.
It's really true. I mean, Katie and I, we can easily get sucked into different directions. So we actually had to create a code word, which whenever we call it squirreling, when we're jumping around and like chasing nuts in different directions. So we're like, okay, squirrel, let's get back on focus. And when you do shut down all those windows on your computer and you do put your phone on silent and you do, close down the email and leave it closed, it really does allow you to be so much more productive. So I couldn't agree more with you on that.
I mean, my assumption as therapists is I'm assuming that most therapists aren't answering their phone during session, and we're probably doing session anywhere between 3 to 6 hours at a time. And guess what? You probably don't have anxiety and you're okay, right? And then when you're done, you go and you answer it and you get it done and it's easy. I know Tim Ferriss talks about the same thing with email in the 4-hour work week. And he suggests putting an away message so people will know, like, hey, I check email at 10 a.m. And 6 p.m. So that's when I'll get back with you. And if you have an emergency, you can call my assistant, type of thing. So that's another great way to divert. And if you have anxiety about beginning to reduce the amount of times that you're checking email, just let people know, hey, I'll get back to you during these times.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing goes for your teammates. Like if you have an assistant or if you're running a group practice, you have to really be clear in the beginning as to what is appropriate for, let's say, an email versus a text versus a call, right? Because a lot of times people will just assume that something's important, so I can just call or text. But if it's not important, or even saving it for an in-person meeting, right? Helping the people that you work with figure out what's imperative, what is truly time sensitive, and what can wait.
You know you can help a couple through a rough patch, and you know that you can help that rebellious teenager see his own worth. You are the right person for the job. The only problem? That rebellious teenager and struggling couple, they just don't know that you're the perfect person for the job. In fact, they don't even know you exist. Why? Because you aren't getting in front of your ideal clients. Your web presence or lack thereof is hindering your ability to work with the people that you know you can help. You deserve to be found by your ideal client, and your ideal client deserves to find you.
Brighter Vision is the trusted solution by thousands of therapists worldwide, helping therapists connect with their ideal clients. For only $59 a month, you get a uniquely designed website, unlimited tech support, and complimentary SEO. And that's not all. Brighter Vision has a ton of free resources to help you along your private practice journey, such as their free webinars, podcasts, and practice building tools. Do yourself and your ideal clients a favor. Get seen and sign up for Brighter Vision today. Visit brightervision.com/try, TRY/startup, STARTUP, to get your first month for free.
We've been partnering with Perry and his team at Brighter Vision for a while now, and we've really enjoyed our interactions with them. They share the same vision as us, helping you fulfill your dream private practice. They're responsive, easy to work with, and create beautifully designed websites. Give us another thing to get more done in less time.
You got to have boundaries with your computer as well. So, and in The One Thing, they talk about this, but when they research this area, workers change windows or check email roughly 37 times per hour, which is incredible. And for a lot of people, I bet it's more. If you're checking it 37 times per hour, I just don't know how you could get that much done. So I encourage people to take it a step further. And actually, if you don't have to be on the internet, let's say you're just creating new content or working on an online course, or even editing your podcast or something like that, turn off the Wi-Fi on your computer, which is something that most people won't even think about doing. But by doing that, you really can unplug and make sure those distractions aren't coming in, and you have your phone on airplane mode as well. nothing bad's going to happen. And sometimes you just have to try it in order to see that, in order to learn to trust it. Whenever I'm on a plane, no matter if it's a short flight or a flight to California, that's a perfect example of when I get a ton of stuff done. I use that flight time almost exclusively for blogging, whether it's creating new content for my group practice or for private practice workshop. I can write 6 blog posts back to back when I have no intrusions on an airplane. So that's a perfect example. There's 2 apps that I use that I really recommend that you can use on your desktop. One, there's something called the tomato timer, which is, I think it's based on the Pomodoro technique, is the name of the person who created this technique. But basically, it allows us to work in small increments, anywhere from, say, 3 to 5 minutes or 10 minutes, depending on how you set it. But when you set this timer, and they do this sort of thing when they're doing behavioral work or working in schools with kids who struggle to focus, which is pretty much all kids. But they really break it down and go, all right, focus for 10 minutes. That timer's going to go off and you're going to get, let's say, a 1-minute break or a 2-minute break. And then the timer's going to go off again and you start another work session. Sometimes just breaking our time down into those little bits can really help get you off the ground, get you motivated, get you feeling like, okay, I'm actually getting somewhere. And I know at the end of this segment, I'm going to get a little break. And there's also kind of an intrinsic reward in that. So that's Tomato Timer. I highly recommend that. There's a social media or a web page limiter that I use called Stay Focused. It's a plugin for Google Chrome. It's just Stay Focused. Focus is FOCUSD. So they left out the E. Stay Focused limits your time on things like Facebook, like Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, whatever it is. So that app will literally just let you spend, let's say 10 minutes a day on Facebook, and you'll be amazed at how quickly that time gets taken up. And then it'll literally just block Facebook from you when you hit that allotted time and you go, oh, wow, I need to get back to work.
I'm sure if an adult uses that, they probably become like a petulant child, like when a parent tells their kid it's time to get off the video games, but I want more Facebook.
Yeah.
Oh man, Facebook is like such a time warp. It's so crazy because we're so conditioned just to like kind of like numb out and automatically check all these things on our phone and Facebook and email and whatever. And I'll just be doing something. All of a sudden I find myself in Facebook and I don't even know how I got there and I don't even know what I was trying to look for. And I've spent like 15 minutes and wasted my time. And I'm like, oh man.
And you get off and then you realize.
I should have had the Stay Focused thing hooked into my phone and my computer. I got to check that out.
Well, even with the amount of Facebook groups that we have, and of course I have a Facebook group that I run and there's some important stuff in there.
Yeah.
And it's also a major time suck, right? So even as a therapist trying to learn more about private practice, you can get on there because you wanted to ask one question about doing online counseling. And then 40 minutes later, you're in a debate with someone who lives in Kansas about the difference between the word counseling and therapy. And you're like, oh, it's 5:30.
How did this happen?
It's so easy.
I know, it's crazy.
Let's talk a little bit about blocking and chunking.
Yeah. So this is a term that was new to me not that long ago, and it's probably new to a lot of people, but it's basically doing one thing at a time, right? So a lot of people do this for podcasting, for example. Like in my case, I just record podcast guests on Wednesday from like 9 until 12. You could and should do the same thing for the other various tasks involved in your private practice, whether it's marketing or blogging or even networking. Just have that time kind of blocked out and dedicated to doing one thing during that time period.
Great. And then you talk about multitasking. It ain't a thing.
It ain't a thing. It's and there's research to back this up. The reality is the brain can only do one thing at a time, right? You're using one neural network at a time, one neural path. If you're doing two things at once, like walking and talking, it's because your brain is actually pinging back and forth between those two things. And so you say, oh, well, I can multitask or I can watch TV and write a blog post at the same time. But you're actually not. You're just pinging back and forth between those two things. And then another statistic for you, we lose about 28% of an average workday due to multitasking or due to attempting to multitask. So if you get that 28% back, I just imagine what you could do with that time. That's a lot.
28%. That is a ton of time.
Right. And if we just look at it in an 8-hour day, that's 2 hours. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty scary. I think for me, multitasking kind of goes back to mindfulness. And for the folks out there that use mindfulness in your practice, it's really tempting to do a bunch of things at once. But what if when you're washing dishes, you just wash the dish. Like you really just focus on that, experience the sensory, experience of that. Same thing when you're with a client, you're not checking your phone, you're not doing this other stuff. And that's part of why it's powerful, right? Is that you are completely attuning to that person and to that experience. So we got to do that in our productivity as well.
This was something I especially struggled with after having my son. He's almost 2.5 now. It's crazy how time flies. But in the beginning, it's really hard when because I've got 2 companies. I have a private practice, and then I have our company with Katie, the private practice startup. And after having him, I was like, okay, well, let me work on my work stuff while he's sleeping, or he's, doing this or doing that. And it was just so hard to be like in 2 places at once. And I finally had to kind of reorganize or reconceptualize my whole life and strategy. And when I'm home, I really try and be home. And when I'm at work, I really try and be at work. So that was one of the hardest things for me in trying to figure out how not to multitask, because I think I had multitasked so easily and not been as productive as I wanted to be. Think about how much I could have accomplished in that 28% every single day that I was multitasking. So yeah, that's been a really important shift in my own life.
John, if you had to give one more valuable tip and tool on this topic, what would that be?
I'm going to cheat and give 1.5 because
Sweet.
I can't decide between these two. One is just to outsource the stuff that you don't need to be doing in your practice, whether it's scheduling or paying someone to write some content for your blog or sending appointment reminders. Just automate that stuff. It's so critical to get that off of your shoulders. And then the other piece is that something that a mentor and a friend of mine told me the other day, because I tend to overwork myself being an entrepreneur and running a private practice workshop. She just said, you need to treat yourself like an employee, right? So don't work yourself harder than you would work an employee or a contractor. And the reality is sometimes I have a tendency to do that and to work these crazy 12-hour days and work on the blog at 10:30 at night and stuff like that. But the reality is if you give yourself a window like 9 to 5 or 4 days a week, 9 to 5, whatever it is, and you have a task you want to get done and you have a limited window, you will figure it out, right? You will actually pace yourself accordingly and get the same amount done in a smaller amount of time if you really hold those boundaries with yourself. So when you're running the show, when you're running your private practice, your business, you have to kind of draw that line with yourself and treat yourself like your best employee.
My business coach would always talk about technology and people leverage, and that's so essential. And recently, this week, somewhere I heard, and I posted this in the group, if you had to remove 5 things from your list of things that you do consistently, what 5 things would those be? So Startup Nation, I'm actually challenging you to think about those things and go ahead and post them in our group. Let's have a conversation of what you're giving up and celebrate that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So what was your half? You said you wanted to give 1.5.
Oh, that was the half.
Okay.
Treat yourself like an employee and then outsource the rest.
Gotcha.
That was really like 2.
Good stuff. Important. Yeah. What do you want to make sure our listeners take away from your message today, John?
I would say that, again, you have to determine daily and even hourly what is a true emergency. Keep coming back to that, right? Have kind of a separation of tasks in terms of what's critical, what needs to get done now or by the end of the week or by the end of just this month, and really get clear on that stuff so that you can focus on what actually has to get done today and then let the rest go and quit letting all these other interferences come into your life and get in the way of you really creating something excellent and creating things that are of quality.
Sweet.
Yeah.
If you could recommend a great book or resource to our audience at Startup Nation, what topic would that be?
For me, it's The One Thing. The book is called The One Thing. It's Gary Keller and I'm forgetting the other dude's name. They're successful real estate moguls somewhere. They just offer this perspective of basically focusing on figuring out what your one thing is and offering that to the world. They go deeper than that and talk about things like multitasking and chunking and things like that. But they really help you step back and identify what is my one thing that I really am great at and that I want to offer to the world, and how do I kind of come back to that product, so to speak, and really make sure I'm doing that as best as I can.
And I believe, I think it's Gary Keller. So it's Keller and Williams. And I think Gary Keller actually lives here in Naples, if I'm correct. That might be a hunch, but who knows?
Very cool.
A lot of what you're talking about has, it's about the time mastery stuff. We had another podcast that we had done with your business coach, your former business coach, Michael Dill, I think that was podcast number 4. It was in the beginning of our
Yes.
podcast. So if you guys want to check that out, we'll include a link for that in the show notes as well. Just a little bit more on the time mastery stuff because it is so important. And John, you have a giveaway for our audience. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the first thing I'll plug is I just recently released, it's an entirely free online course called the Business Basics Workshop. It is all of the practice essential knowledge that you need to know to start or run your private practice and just run a really tight ship with the day-to-day, with the operations. It's got a lot of freebies involved in the workshop. It's just a really great course, and I think people are getting a ton out of it. So that's free at privatepracticeworkshop.com. And then the other offer I wanted to make specifically for listeners of this episode is that I'm going to offer 10% off all consulting packages for private practice startup listeners who reference this podcast episode. And to check out those packages, you can just go to the website, or if you want to go right to the page, it's privatepracticeworkshop.com/consulting-packages. So you can check out the packages there and get in touch if you're interested in working with me.
Awesome. Good stuff. Yeah. So those are great 2 giveaway options, and we'll include the links in our show notes as well so people can easily access them.
So guys, what a great topic. We love talking about time mastery because it really is essential whether you're starting in private practice or you're growing and building your private practice. So make sure you guys check out all the great resources, information, tips on the show notes page. And we would really love for you guys to rate and review our podcast. Share with us how you feel about it, what your thoughts, and of course, share it with your fellow colleagues and friends. We hope you have an amazing day, and we look forward to continuing to inspire you from startup to mastery.
Catch you later, Startup Nation. Thanks for joining us on The Private Practice Startup. Visit theprivatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, free trainings, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and so much more.